Welcome back to yet another edition of Gaming Forever. I am your Fennec Fox, Lux Valentine, and I'm pleased to bring you a very special treat. Elliot Mahan, developer of the 10th Line, was kind enough to take some time out of his busy schedule to talk to us about this fantasy adventure RPG.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes. Okay, thank you for taking time, Elliot. Okay, so we'll just jump straight through and get this one bashed out properly. Okay, so first off, what made you want to go down the particular RPG route for your game, The 10th Line?
Oh, well, RPGs have always been my thing. I've been playing them since I was a kid, and I grew up through the 90s when they really hit their peak. And in the late 90s, they started trying to branch away from the standard formula and get really experimental, so I kind of took inspiration from that, because that was probably the highlight of my gaming career so far.
Wow. Did you have any particular RPGs that were your favorite?
Sure. Yeah, the Tri-Ace offerings from the late 90s, like Star Ocean, I took inspiration from that. And, of course, the Final Fantasies, they started really getting experimental around that time, too.
So, the 10th Line is set in a completely different world apart from our own. And it also resonates with the current social climate and the stress of the world's future. What were your inspirations to kind of go down that storyline with the 10th Line?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I originally wrote the story probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's just a short story, and I decided to flesh it out and make it into a game project. So the climate at the time, probably a little different from now, but I went with some general fantasy conflicts, the racial inequalities, that sort of thing. It seems like an easy well to dip into, but I also try to make it more character focused to give more grounded appeal for how to handle those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Also, we've noticed you have anthropomorphic characters, so not just humans but creatures as well, foxes, dragons and the like. How did their species influence their design and their characters?
Right, and I took a very Aesop route where the characters are designed after animals that reflect some sort of human emotion or human facet, and then the humans themselves consider themselves neutral or better, and so they can classify the beast races according to how they expect them to behave, and then I try to turn that on its head at the same time. So every character that has an outward appearance acts differently when you really get to know them.
Also, the characters in question, so you have Rick, Tox, to name a few. I'm not going to name too many because I don't want to throw any spoilers in there. But they are wonderfully designed and very, very well written. Could you tell me what influences you had when you were writing their personalities, their quirks, because they are very, very solid and you really do feel a connection with them when you're playing the game?
Sure. Well, dialogue is kind of my thing, and I like to write it as naturally as I can. So if the character were really speaking, this is what they would say with all the little verbal tics and that sort of thing. Because a lot of RPGs have hyper-polished dialogue that basically everybody reads flatly. I prefer the notion that you should be able to see dialogue and know who's talking without being able to see the name or the picture. So that was my real driving force going in.
Did you base it on anyone in particular, any of the characters, to people that you knew personally, or was it all just completely from your own imagination?
If I did, it wasn't intentional. I just made them up to bounce off one another and that sort of thing.
Okay. Our leading lady, the princess, you took an unusual approach when we first meet her. She's sassy, strong, determined, and arrogant. She is not your typical stereotype of damsel in distress or kind of like a frail beauty. What influenced your decision to take her in this direction?
Oh, well, I like doing that with protagonists. Like I said before, they have an initial appearance and a way you would interpret them, and then I try to turn it on its head, either immediately like her, or over time as you get to learn the depths of the characters. So I don't like to write anyone that is, flat and is a product of first impressions.
there are lots and lots of development mechanics for each of the characters, so stats and abilities. You've also got all these little extras of card games, mini quests. Which games, through your own history of playing as a gamer, inspired you to take on those little extras and put them in?
Sure. Like I said, the later 90s RPGs, Final Fantasy VIII, for instance, had the card game, and really most of the Squaresoft offerings from that time had weird battle mechanics, progression mechanics, as they were branching out and experimenting with things. So I tried to take that to heart and see what I could come up with, while also giving each character its own development and progression, and not really a job, but their own specific abilities and ways to develop them to give them more of a personality than just being a flat level up system.
In terms of the graphic style, in terms of the visualization of the game, you had 3 different artists in particular aid you in this. Could you tell us a little more about them?
Oh, sure. Karina was the character designer. I sought her out first. Well, actually, she sought me out. I did a request for bid for the character artist position, and I was blown away by her work immediately, so it was a great thrill working with her. And then Doman handled the UI and world art, and he was probably the closest thing to an art director I had, because I went to him for consultation and advice more than once. And then Keith did the sprite work. And
how did they come about in harmonizing their styles? Because it all seems to work wonderfully together.
Well, I pretty much came up with it on my own. As far as I know, they didn't really cross-communicate. So they would come back to me, and I had a vision in mind, of course, for what I wanted. But as for expressing that, I guess I got lucky that they managed to harmonize so well.
Also, is there any sequels in the work for this particular universe, or do you have any new projects in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'm not working on a sequel. I feel like the story is pretty self-contained, but I am working on a new project. It's based on one of my older properties, sort of a reboot, reimagining of it. So I hope to show something from that soon.
And on a final question, if there was anything you could do different to the 10th line, or anything that you'd like to add to it, what would it be?
That's a good one. I guess it's more linear than most people are expecting, and that it's a linear narrative, so I designed that outright. But if I could fill it out, it would probably be more horizontally like that, with more side areas and that sort of thing.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Elliot. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
And we hope to see more from you in future.
I hope to provide it.
Excellent. Take care.
You too.